it has become an abstract area where the discretion of the OTT content creators are carrying more weightage than the regulatory mechanism that we have.
The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology has also asked the Centre to take stringent measures against any such incidents. So all these have actually re-intensified the debate surrounding the OTT regulation in India.
We need more structured regulatory independent supervisory committees or bodies.
Instead of bringing in new regulations, we can simply try to enforce what is present on paper.
It is very essential that we understand that creative freedom is very crucial when it comes to a vibrant democracy.
Podcasters, they're becoming famous, popular, and with that popularity comes immense responsibility. Unless and until you are a responsible content creator, you can simply be popular, but again you'll be inviting criticism, unwarranted public flack.
That OTT platforms are adhering to the guidelines or not. And we can also create broadcasting guidelines which will help to streamline the age-related content labelings.
Hello and welcome to Perspective, a series by VisionIAS where we talk about pressing contemporary issues relevant for civil service as well as curious minds. With the advent of internet and rise of social media, OTT platforms have gained prominence. What are these OTT platforms? They are the platforms that provide content directly via internet, bypassing the traditional setups of providing content. Now, this has provided a lot of freedom to content creators for providing diverse content, but they have also raised concerns related to abusive language, obscenity, and other such challenges. In this video, we will discuss about all these issues with our esteemed panelists Chiranjit sir, Prateek sir, and Sunil sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, sir, before we start, Sunil sir, can you tell our audience how these OTT platforms are different from the traditional media that we have?
Kapil, after 5 years of independence, we enacted Cinematography Act 1952. Cinematography Act 1952 regulate and monitor cinema and traditional TV broadcasters through Central Board of Film Certification. On the other hand, OTT platforms are self-regulated under Information Technology Rules 2021. Unlike cinema and traditional TV broadcasters, which have to go through CBFCs so as to obtain certification, OTT content creators self-assess their content and provide content labeling according to the discretion they have. That's why it has become an abstract area where the discretion of the OTT content creators are carrying more weightage than the regulatory mechanism that we have.
Adding to what Sunil sir has mentioned, the problem remains in terms of enforcement. While the platform has the liberty to classify their content based on age, for example, we have classifications such as U, which stands for universal. We have UA 13+, UA 7+, 16+, and R or adult. But the problem is even content which are meant for mature audiences are easily accessible by minors. This is because of poor enforcement of parental control mechanisms. Now, Kapil, if you look at various countries, they have very stringent provisions when it comes to monitoring of such content. But for India, it remains a very vital question to answer. Should we monitor or should we strengthen our existing self-regulation content framework, or should we import or should we adopt a framework that is more in line with traditional regulatory mechanism?
Chiranjit sir, as Sunil sir has pointed out, the discretion that the OTT platform has, and as Prateek sir said, that the challenge of regulation as well as enforcement, this becomes a good recipe for a controversy, as we have seen recently, right? So can you point out what is this controversy and what transpired?
As you said, everyone knows it, what happened. A popular YouTube podcaster made an obscene remark as a guest judge in a particular show. So that triggered a lot of public resentment and anger. The Supreme Court also intervened while taking into consideration the complaints lodged. And the Supreme Court said that it was highly objectionable, offensive, and that the podcaster lacked social responsibility. It has also asked the central government, to come up with an anti-obscenity law if possible. At the same time, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology has also asked the center to take stringent measures against any such incidents. So all these have actually re-intensified the debate surrounding the OTT regulation in India.
Adding to what Chiranjit sir has mentioned, it basically revolves around the central question that where does free speech end and where does obscenity laws begin? So if you look at the framework within which free speech operates in India, we have constitutional framework, we have legal mechanism, and we have Supreme Court observation from time to time to guide us. So if you look at the constitutional mechanism, we have Article 19(1)(a), which provides to all the citizens the right to free speech and expression. However, as we all know, this right is not absolute in nature. It is bound by certain reasonable restrictions such as public morality, order, and etc. etc. In terms of legal provisions, we have Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Section 294 and 296 provides for punishment with regard to any public obscenity. Also, we have Section 67 of IT Act 2000 regarding this. Now, it helps us to understand what Supreme Court has said about this matter. So in Abhik Sarkar Ke 2014, Supreme Court has mentioned that obscenity or nudity shall not be seen only in isolation, but it should be seen in a social context, right? And in 2024, in Apurva Arora case, Supreme Court mentioned that obscenity or profanity used in any OTT show shall not be criminalized, but it should be governed within the existing framework of law in India.
So Sunil sir, all these controversies, like they raise a bigger question about the impact of the content that is coming from these OTT platform. So what is the larger societal impact of such content on Indian population in general?
Kapil, there are several studies with respect to this, and they have pointed out that there is larger desensitization towards violence and abusive language. Thus, you see, the abusive behavior with the youth is increasing. Second, psychologically, the viewers and the audience are getting affected, and they are more anxious, and there is a behavioral shift that is seen in their character. Lastly, we see that there is a changing perception related to relationships, changing gender roles, which is impacting the youth and the viewership of our country.
To build on this, we also need to consider the inherent difference between how traditional media and how OTT regulate. So traditional media is characterized by fixed schedule and also by strict regulation. However, there is no fixed regulation as far as OTT is concerned. It is majorly driven by on demand. Okay, so if someone wants to watch any content at any time, it is readily available to everyone, right? So here the problem comes in terms of monitoring and enforcement of regulation. So for this, we need to have better parental control. We also need to increase digital literacy.
Chiranjeev sir, now as Pratik sir has pointed out that regulation is a challenge for these OTT platforms. But we have a regulatory mechanism for these OTT platforms, and that is the three-tier mechanism under IT rules of 2021. So can you throw some light for viewers, what is this regulatory mechanism that is so talked about and how OTT is regulated in India?
So if you go by the IT rules 2021, the word OTT is not mentioned. Instead, the word social media intermediaries or social media publishers is mentioned. So there is actually a three-tier framework which goes like this. For example, if a particular viewer is watching a YouTube video and he is not happy or satisfied with the content, he can easily raise a complaint. That is the tier 1 level of redressing complaints. So what you can do, you can simply raise an issue and that will be addressed by the grievance redressal officer at the tier 1 level. And it is the responsibility of that officer to respond to that particular complaint in 15 days. If that does not happen, then the viewer can actually approach the tier 2 level or level 2 of grievance redressal. And here, again, it's self-regulatory in nature, but there is an industrial body which goes by the name of Indian Broadcasting and Digital Foundation. Okay, so it has created a regulatory mechanism, and there is a council which considers requests at the tier 2 level. Again, if the viewer is not satisfied that the complaint is not properly redressed, it can take the help of the oversight mechanism. So here comes the government. The government directly gets involved at the oversight mechanism, which is tier 3 level. So what will the government do? It will create an interdepartmental committee, which will have members from different ministries. starting from Ministry of Women Development, Ministry of Women and Child Development, External Affairs Ministry if required, and MeitY, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. And this IDC has the power not just to penalize that particular entity, but also it can easily instruct for content removal or modifications if required. So this is the three-tier structure as mentioned in the IT Rules 2021.
Additionally, we need to go beyond this because this also is self-regulatory in nature. We need more structured regulatory independent supervisory committees or bodies. As we have seen in the UK, there is an independent supervisory regulator who enforces the guidelines and ensures compliance. In India also, we need a structured regulatory body which can regulate OTTs on one hand and allow creativity on the other hand.
So Sunil sir, how is this regulation, what changes sir has pointed out as we have in India, different from the other countries in the world?
Different countries have distinct regulatory mechanism. In this regard, UK has the strict regulatory mechanism. In UK, there is Ofcom. Ofcom is the regulatory body and oversight body. Ofcom ensures legal compliance of broadcasting guidelines. In this regard, OTT platforms are treated as traditional broadcasters. Content classification rules are also applied to OTT streaming platforms like Amazon, Netflix, and BBC iPlay. Misinformation is penalized, and OTT platforms has to ensure that there are age-related filters in content viewership. In this way, Ofcom ensures legal accountability and legal obligation on OTT platforms so as to safeguard the rights of the viewers. But this is not the case in India.
Now, building upon what Sunil sir said, there are two other models. One is the European Union model and the other one is the United States model. Now, both these models are not as strict as the UK model. But when it comes to enforcement, these two models are very efficient. Even the Indian model is much more strict than the European Union model and more so as compared to the US model. But what is lacking in India is the enforcement of the same. So let's discuss in brief the two models. In the United States, there is a body called MPA, Motion Pictures Association, which has limited governance over the theatrical release of films. When it comes to the OTT, it is absolutely voluntary upon the OTT players to follow the regulations set by MPA. For example, age content labels. For example, if a particular film is based on related to child or children themes, then the OTT player can do that. But it is absolutely voluntary upon that. So MP has no say, no regulatory power over OTT. There is another body which is similar to a body like TRAI in India. And that body is called FCC, Federal Communications Commission. Now this body makes sure that the internet service providers provide proper bandwidth to the online players or the OTT players. It has some oversight as regards content which can be inappropriate for children. Okay, so these are the two models which are from the United States, and there is a third model. So these are the two sub-models of the United States. The second model is that of the European Union. Now coming to the European Union model. Now this model, as compared to the US model, is governed by an overarching law which has been set by the European Union. And the European Union member states have to follow this overarching law. They can still continue their domestic laws. Now what does this law say? The law says that there should be proper at least 30% of the content catalog should be European. And there are provisions related to checking content which might be inappropriate for children. At the same time, it treats OTT players like normal traditional broadcasting players. So in a way you can say that in terms of strictness, the European Union model is more strict than the US model.
Prateek sir, we have seen the regulation in India. We have talked about the regulatory models of the world. Coming back to the core question, and that is this freedom of speech versus obscenity issue. So where does one draw that line?
So Kapil, it is very essential that we understand that creative freedom is very crucial when it comes to a vibrant democracy. So with the proliferation of OTT, we have seen that filmmakers have been allowed to explore diverse social, political, cultural themes, right? For example, the show Black Warrant talks about the various conditions of prisoner in our jail system. Or if you look at or take the example of Panchayat, it talks about how the implementation of 73rd Amendment of our Constitution is being practiced in reality. It also raises issues like Sarpanch Pati. It talks about interference of bureaucracy. So it exposes the viewers with diverse set of problems. So the point is that we need to have regulation, but the regulation need not turn into censorship. A second order problem with excessive regulation could be the challenges with regard to economic implication. So with that, we can have several issues with regard to economic implication. The first one would be that it may deter foreign investment because of stringent conditions with regard to implementation or regulation. The second would be it would also enable the creators to go for self-censorship in the sense that they would be required to adhere to very strict guidelines, and that would also go against the fundamental right to freedom of profession, which is guaranteed under Article 19(1)(g). Thirdly, this may also lead to lesser content from the regional areas because of high cost of compliance.
Sir talked about artistic freedom. Now, what lies on the other side is, what we're discussing, obscenity or below the belt remark. We can actually put an end to that. I know it's a very difficult line. It's a fine line between what is humorous and what can be offensive. So what can be done right now is, because digital content creators like podcasters, they're becoming famous, popular, and with that popularity comes immense responsibility. Unless and until you are a responsible content creator, you can simply be popular, but again you'll be inviting criticism, unwarranted public flack, and at the same time the government cannot overregulate these content creators. What can be done is to strike a balance. This is the age-old dilemma of promoting and checking. So what can be done is that instead of bringing in new regulations, we can simply try to enforce what is present on paper.
Sunil sir, coming to the solutions of this whole discussion about freedom of speech versus obscenity or other kind of regulations, what kind of solutions can we look forward so that these controversies don't happen, yet there is a space for people to provide good or innovative content?
See, Kapil, we can provide n number of solutions to this, but when we see the whole issue, we need to restrict ourselves to the main things that are related to this issue. First is that the content is being transferred to the audience which it does not reflect to, like the minors. For that, we can use AI. AI can help us to see whether the particular person does fall in that category, age category, where he should be seeing that content or not. Second is mandatory parental control throughout all OTT platforms. Then we can create an independent supervisory body which can see that OTT platforms are adhering to the guidelines or not. And we can also create broadcasting guidelines which will help to streamline the age-related content labelings.
Adding to what Sir said, we can actually emulate the MPA model, especially when it comes to age category or age-based labeling. And there was actually a very good bill which was introduced last year, but unfortunately it could not see the light of day, and it was called Draft Broadcasting Services Bill, which was introduced by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. And there was a very nice provision, that of content regulation. It actually provided for a committee called Content Evaluation Committee. If such a committee is there and it's associated with each and every entity, then at least before the release of the videos or any such content, it can be regulated, or properly things can be kept in check.
I have two more suggestions. One is that we need to have some sort of system where every violation is penalized in terms of monetary level. Secondly, we also need to keep in mind the observations by Supreme Court, as was given in Shreya Singhal case, that there should be regulation, but it shall not have any chilling impact on the creative freedom of the individual.
Thank you so much, panelists, for this detailed discussions about OTT and its various aspects. The OTT landscape in India is evolving rapidly. There is need to protect creative freedom, but it should be balanced with social responsibility. What are your views about this particular topic? Should Government of India ensure strict regulation or should we leave it for self-regulation? Share your opinions in the comment section. And for more such interesting and topics that matter to you, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.